Hi, thank you, Einar, for that. And let me introduce our next speaker. Kristín Vala Ragnarsdóttir. Kristín Vala Ragnarsdóttir is the rare combination of academic and activist. She is professor at the Institute of Earth Sciences, University of Iceland, and was previously Dean of Engineering and Natural Science at that university and Professor of Environmental Sustainability at the University of Bristol, UK. She is actively involved with international think tanks on sustainability, including being a Global Council member and ambassador of the Wellbeing Economy Alliance. Distinguished Fellow at the Schumacher Institute, UK, member and former Vice President of the Balaton Group, and member of the International Club of Rome. Vala is a member of several scientific academies, such as Academia Europaea, Norwegian Academy of Science and Letters, Icelandic Academy, and the Royal Society of Arts and Commerce. Grounded in earth science, Vala has been envisioning sustainable futures and finding sustainability transformative solutions with her students since the turn of the century. Her research engagement focuses on evaluating natural resources and their economic link through natural resource evaluation, system dynamics, determining sustainability indicators for soil tourism, and the circular and well-being economy, and finding fabric for sustainable communities. Her recent activities include casting light on corruption in natural resource management, linking population, soil, phosphorus, and sustainable land management with food security, developing groundwork for new economies to achieve the SDGs, and demonstrating the need for the regenerative well-being economy due to the global climate emergency. Recently, Vala was a member of the Icelandic Prime Minister Committee that developed 39 indicators of well-being, as well as the government committee outlining future energy policy to 2050. She is the author of over 150 academic publications and book chapters. Vala co-edited Pollutants, Human Health and Environment by Wiley, 2011, and was a subject editor of the Oxford Companion to Earth, published by Oxford University Press, 2000. She has also co-edited several special journal issues. Vala is currently engaged in editing, contributing to and writing books on transformation literacy, Springer, regenerative well-being, economy, Schumacher briefing, and rethinking economics at Edward Elgar. In the past few years, Kristín Vala has been active in training parliamentary members in sustainability thinking, and more recently in the Pirate Party in Iceland, and is in particular taken part in developing party policies that address climate change, sustainability, and new economic thinking. She is frequently spotted in protests in front of the Icelandic Parliament on issues that relate to corruption and lack of action taken in our times of climate and planetary crisis. Welcome, Kristín Vala.
Well, thank you very much for this very lengthy introduction. I am very pleased to be here with you, and actually listening to Giorgio reminded me of my huge regret that when I was a student, I never studied any philosophy, but I've been struggling to learn some in the last 20 years since I became aware of the unsustainability of the world. And it was also interesting to hear Einar talk about the utopia of a money-free society, which of course would be great. So what I'm going to do next is share my screen. Okay. So for the last 20 years, I've been thinking about how to help make this world sustainable, and have gone through various phases of looking into soil sustainability, community sustainability, indicators for sustainability, etc. But then I finally understood that what we really needed to address was the economy, because it's actually the economy that is driving the global destruction. We could see or say that the Earth has been shrinking when we look at it through the lens of population. In the year 1900, we almost had 8 global hectares to support our lives. But now in 2020, we have less than 2. And this is because the population now is 7.8 billion and rising. And therefore, we are making a bigger and bigger imprint on our planet Earth. It doesn't matter what we look at, all the curves look the same. They're all exponential curves from the time of 1750 to 2000. Population has increased exponentially, so has the globe GDP, or the global domestic product, which every politician likes to mention as a success if the economy is growing. And other things have also been rising in the same manner. Our natural resources have been extracted in an exponential manner also, and we have been going up the left-hand side here of the exponential curve, but because we live on a limited planet, at some point we will get to a maximum extraction, and after that we have half of the resource left, but it will take us more energy and more effort and more water to get it out of the earth and process it. And therefore we are hitting this century resource depletions that few people have set their eyes on. At the same time, because in extracting all these resources, we have used more and more energy, and we have also reached a peak in energy production, because the renewable energy will never replace the cheap oil that we have been using, or the cheap coal. But such an extraction of growth, seen here as on a logarithmic graph at a straight line, is impossible into the future, as seen by these curves, which will peak before 2050. And at the same time, the ecosystems have been declining in an exponential manner, and so has species extinction. And we have hit planetary boundaries, as shown on this figure here. We have gone over the climate boundary of biogeochemical flows in terms of using phosphorus and nitrogen in agriculture, in land system change, in biosphere integrity as seen as species extinction, and in climate. We have too much CO2 in the atmosphere for a stable climate. At the same time, we are approaching what we know are tipping points in the climate system, but we don't know exactly when we will hit them, or whether we can prevent them, such as the melting of the Greenland glacier, which will make the saline waters coming from the Caribbean and the Gulf Stream less saline, and then the stream will not sink in the Northern Atlantic, creating this conveyor belt that we have here in the North Atlantic, making the climate up here actually livable in Iceland. And if the Gulf Stream switches off, then it will be a lot colder in this part of the world. And it has happened before. And despite many meetings since the 70s on climate, monthly CO2 averages are still rising. Paris Agreement came into effect in 2015, and CO2 is still rising until we hit COVID. We had reduction in CO2 emissions this year. And amazingly, governments have not been listening to scientists, except more recently about climate change, but they have been listening to scientists and health experts since the COVID crisis. So another interesting thing is that most people didn't understand what exponential growth means until COVID hit. And now people even understand doubling times, which is a good step forward. So globally, in April, the emissions were 17% lower than last year. And in Australia, they were 28% lower. And you can see that it is mostly because of less surface transport, that is fewer people going to work because people were working at home or had lost their jobs, and less consumption. So a lot of people talk about aviation, which went down actually 60%, but that was only 10% of the reduction because aviation is 3% of the emissions in a normal year. Now, we need to reduce CO2 emissions about 3% every year until 2030 if we want to be under the 2-degree goal of the Paris Agreement, and we need to reduce it by 7% if we want to be under 1.5 degrees. And so what has happened now in the global economy is something that we need to take note of. We have reduced CO2 emissions by in the same sort of order of magnitude. And so if we learn to use more sustainable surface transport, work more at home, etc., then we can reduce reduce emissions, especially if we reduce our consumption. So we have to learn to live on this one planet. You can see here the planet as seen from space, and you can see the thin blue line here around the Earth. This is the Earth atmosphere, and we have been using it as a rubbish bin for the fossil fuels that we have been burning. And we could say that the Earth is a closed system, only getting energy from the sun. And some of this energy is emitted back to space, but more and more of it is actually being trapped in the atmosphere, which now has more CO2 and water vapor. So this is our common goal that we need to work on together if we want to have a future for our children and grandchildren. We need to learn to live on one Earth. There have been declarations of climate emergency from the Club of Rome, of which I'm a member, from governments and organizations and NGOs and faith groups around the globe, as seen on this map. I wish I would have learned some philosophy so that I can, and I'm going to study these slides, Giorgio. I may call you to help me go through them and read the philosophy of John McMurtry. It sounds really interesting. Over the last 50 years, human population has doubled and the global economy has grown nearly fourfold. The global trade has grown tenfold. And this has driven up the energy and materials use exponentially, as I've discussed before. And yet we have politicians who say that when there is a dip in economic growth, that we should go out and buy more stuff. And here, actually, over 90% of what we buy is thrown away within a year. And we have created a society of this, children who are unhappy and disconnected, even though they have all these toys, and with a father sitting here with no connection to his little boy playing behind him. This is what we need to change. We need to have a vision of where we can go from having a global economy fueling the destruction of society with unhappy, lonely people seeing no value in anything else than buying new stuff, and at the same time destroying our nature. And we can see that with the cyclones and forest fires and climate change and industrial agriculture destroying our soils. And Greta and thousands of kids around the world, actually millions, are now standing up and say, why are you talking about fairy tales of eternal economic growth? How dare you? And I agree entirely. And she has become the icon of the young people's movement to fight for governments to take scientists seriously. So what if we now set ourselves some new scenarios? We go from individualism to community. We go from focusing on GDP growth to focusing on well-being. Then we can go from the market force economy we live in today, which is destroying the planet, to the great transition that we need, where we have healthy communities and well-being for people and nature. Then we can restore our Earth. That is where we need to go. So we need to set a vision for how we are going to achieve resetting all our activities so that the economy is not destroying nature, and that where we create healthy societies. This is our common goal. Well, we have the UN Sustainable Development Goals, but they were recently checked by Gapminder and found that in the 5 years since they were set, only 6 targets of the 35 that could be measured are on track. Some are actually gone backwards. So we are not doing well. We are not doing well enough with the common goals, even though it's good to have these goals. Even Robert Kennedy said that a country's gross domestic products measure everything except that which makes life worthwhile. And I was working with a number of people that met in Bhutan in 2013, and we wrote this commentary for Nature's, that it was time to leave GDP behind. But what should we measure then? You can see here a global GDP, that's the green line here, going up and up and up and up since the 1950s. Whereas here you can see GPI, or the Genuine Progress Indicator. And there we subtract everything that's bad in the economy, like pollution and accidents and so on. And we add in everything that's good, like voluntary work and restoring ecosystems and whatever we are doing. And then what happens, we see that in the 1970s, this curve here, which was growing, is growing at the cost of ecosystems and society. And therefore we can say that we had economic growth until about 1978, but since 1978 we have had an uneconomic growth and have been working on together destroying the planet. Now there is quite a lot of new envisioning of a new economy. This one was put forward by Kate Raworth and has caught a lot of attention. She refers to it as the donut economy. It takes the planetary boundaries concept from the paper of Rockstrom et al. And puts then, and so minds the environmental ceiling that we have. And within that, we need to find a safe and just space for humanity and provide the social foundation as defined by Max Staff. And then you can see that you can link all of these to different SDG goals or SDG targets within the goals. So this would be a good step forward. Amsterdam has already adopted the donut for their future visioning of the city. Costa Rica is about doing the same, and about over 100 regions and local cities and economies want to go in the same direction. So all good progress. Then there is what is referred to as the regenerative economy, comes from John Fullerton at the Capital Institute. He says that both in the economy and in investment, in finance, we need to go from the conventional degenerating mechanistic design, reductionist thinking, which is in parts, all the way over here to the regenerative. Green economy is not good enough. Sustainable sort of puts us into balance, but that's not good enough because we actually have destroyed ecosystems and societal groups. So we need to invest in what is restorative and even better regenerative, like we have in ecosystems. So the economy needs to be built on the principles of ecology with holistic thinking and patterns and natural system design. And as stated by Hunter Loven, a way must be found to reduce material throughput in the economy dramatically, but at the same time generate jobs and flourishing livelihoods for 9 or 10 billion people. This is our task. And some academics have taken this idea further by using networking thinking and systemic thinking. They've come up with 10 principles, which are put into 4 categories for the regenerative economy, where we need to have circulations. So there's cross-scale circulation, there is regenerative reinvestment, we have reliable inputs and healthy outputs. Then we have adequate structure with a balance of sizes and balance of resilience and efficiency and sufficient number and diversity of roles. And then we also have relationships and values as outlined by Giorgio. We need to have a degree of mutualism and constructive work instead of extractive. And then finally, we need to be learning together. So here we are. There are quite a lot of people around the world working on finding a new economic thinking to restore our planet. Some of them are people-centered, others are process-centered, others are nature-centered. We need them all, and because one size doesn't fit all. In 2019, the Club of Rome declared planetary emergency and set forth 10 commitments for global commons and public goods, restoring the global commons, such as crucial forests and ocean ecosystems, and public goods in order to have healthcare for all, as learned from the COVID crisis. And then 10 commitments for the transformation, for a just and equitable society, for renewable energy systems and circular and regenerative economy. And now there is a planetary emergency partnership with over 140 organizations and over 70 governments signed up to doing more than the Paris Agreement as the last UN General Assembly. And this is the latest paper that I have been involved with a 10-point action plan for a circular bioeconomy of well-being, where we remember that we have renewable energy, need to focus on renewable energy and be within nature limits and restore nature at the same time as generating a healthy society. And we have generated in 2017 what we call the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, which has the goal to deliver shared well-being on a healthy planet. And there are over 150 organizations that have joined and more coming up. A lot of activity across the globe with regular meetings over the web that everybody can join in with. We have some governments that have joined in with the well-being thinking. Nicola Sturgeon and Jacinda Ardern were the first prime ministers to put well-being into the goals of the government in Scotland and New Zealand. And a bit later, Katrín Jakobsdóttir came in to join them, and more recently we've had Wales also, and are working on getting more people involved. And you should watch this TED talk by Nicola Sturgeon on the importance of creating the well-being economy. And a lot of countries, even those who are not in the Wellbeing Economy Government Alliance, have set well-being indicators. For example, the Netherlands and Sweden. These are the 39 indicators, well-being indicators for Iceland that I was part in defining, and they have now been put into policy by the Icelandic government. So this is a way forward. What also occurred to me and my colleagues is that we need more women to be involved in economic thinking, and therefore we applied for funding to train young women on new economic thinking. And so I'm doing this in collaboration with the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, the Schumacher Institute, where I'm a distinguished fellow, and the Collective Leadership Institute. Any young woman watching this, or if you know any, please direct them to our website, and applications are open until December 31st. The women will receive leadership training, and they will set forth at the end of their training a new manifesto for a regenerative well-being economy at the end of next year. A quick step we can take, and I always need to remind people of, is that we could actually make ecocide, which is destruction of ecosystem, a crime. And this can be done through the so-called Rome Statute, which has 4 crimes of aggression, crimes of genocide, the crimes against humanity. It's genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and crimes of aggression. Ecocide could be the 5th one, and this is what Polly Higgins fought for until she passed away, and the organization she created is continuing. And this would actually put directors of big companies that pollute, are responsible for the majority of the polluting on this planet, that could put them in prison, and they might actually be thinking about doing things differently. We could also claim the sky. You could join the movement here to demand that the atmosphere is made a commons, and so anybody who pollutes has to pay into a fund. So these are quick steps that can be taken, but this is what we need to be working on together. We need to govern the commons and measure the well-being of people and planet. We need to implement and scale radical prototypes of new economic approaches. And if we improve the current system, the future will be okay. And we need to generate and disseminate an entirely new worldview of our relationship with the planet and between people. This needs to be an economy in service of life. Let's work on that together. And I invite you all to join me. And I can see after learning a bit more about the Zeitgeist movement that this is exactly the aim of your movement, is to regenerate an economy in service of life. Thank you.